Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's session is the art of bidding, the state of bidding in 2025. Again, thank you to those who have joined some of our sessions this morning, and thank you for participating in Optimize. We're very excited to have you here. So today we are lucky to have a wonderful group. We are going to talk through the state of bidding in 2025. What do things look like right now? And what can we predict or try to predict for the new year? So I am going to go ahead and kick over to them and let them do their intros. And then we'll do a quick survey and then get into the conversation. So I'll go ahead and Marsha, you're at the top of my screen. Why don't you go ahead?
All right, wonderful. Thank you. I'm Marsha Watson. I'm the CEO of BTW and Company. I've been in proposal and federal contracting for about 20 years, focusing on capture and proposal processes and best practices for some of the largest top 10s and then some tribal Super 8As as well. So kind of seeing the changes going on inside the federal government in every aspect over the last 2 decades. But for BTW and Co's clients, I really focus on training and mentorship and infrastructure development so that the companies are prepared to succeed when those RFPs start coming out. Thanks, Allison.
Excellent. Teresa, do you want to jump in?
Absolutely. So I'm Teresa Thomas, the COO of BTW and Co. And I have also over 20 years of experience helping small to billion-dollar companies leading their proposal and growth operations to help them scale sustainably and align to their goals, and very much focus on operations, getting the sand out of the gears and making things more efficient. And I love continuous improvement.
Excellent. Kristen?
Yeah, I'm Kristen Maycumber. I'm the founder CEO of Summit Strategy. I've been in proposals and BD and GovCon for 23 years, I think. I spent 17 of those in-house leading BD and proposal teams for multiple billion-dollar companies, and then started my own company almost 5 years ago. So we have supported over 200 government contractors of all shapes and sizes with everything from BD strategy, proposals, marketing and branding, and training. And I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Jeff?
Good day, everyone. I'm Jeff Shapiro. I'm a partner at Cohn Resnick. I'm the CPA representative on today's panel. I also have over 20 years doing government contracting. I specialize in DCA style contract audits, both performing the audits themselves and also helping companies deal with the audit. So I know estimating systems pretty well and helping companies out with their various pricing issues. When I was with the government for 8.5 years, and I spent a bunch of that time leading cost evaluation teams. So I'll be giving a bit of that perspective today. Looking forward to the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just a quick note of housekeeping for the session for everybody. We have a lot of great info in our console that you can download. And we're going to get into a quick poll, like I said, before we start the conversation. You can click right on the screen to answer that. And then the third thing is the Q&A. So we do have our Q&A box. We welcome you to ask as many questions as you would like, as often as you would like. We'll try to filter those into the conversation, and then anything we don't get to, we will pop in at the end. Also, at the end, we'll give you information. Our panelists, I encourage you to connect with them on LinkedIn after the session if you want to continue any of this conversation or have any follow-up questions. So I'm going to go ahead, and we just want to get a feel for who we have in the room and what's important to you. So like I said, you can answer the poll right on the screen, and just want to know what type of work does your team or organization pursue. So are you mostly in the federal space, doing a lot of state and local, in the commercial or private sector, or is there something else that's important to you right now? So just want to understand where everybody's at. So you can go ahead and just click on the screen to answer. When we get a few, we'll look at what the answers are or what our majority is, and then we'll go from there. You coming in, very good. We'll give it just a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump onto the results. All right, so we have a mix here. So we have a lot of folks in the federal space, but we do have a lot of commercial and private sector folks here as well. So interesting, and that will help us to shape some of the conversation. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to jump back to our cover page here and jump into our questions. So first things first, if you had to describe the federal bidding landscape in 2025, in one word or, stream of words, whatever makes the most sense, what would it be and why?
I can jump.
Oh, go ahead, Kristen. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
I was going to say, I've been trying to think of a word, and all the words I can come up with are bad words. And so I know you don't want me to probably cuss on the internet live. So I'll go with a PG version and say roller coaster. I think that's probably a nice way to put this year. And then you can fill in whatever expletives you think I would have wanted to say.
That's fair.
I'm glad you started, because that's about where I was going to go. The word I landed on, however, is unprecedented. I think that there is very little that we can predict based on history, but I also think that there's advantage in that, because I think that there's a lot of sustained historical muscle memory that we probably need to revive. And there's habits that we need to change, but I think unprecedented. I think it's a really great time for people who are flexible and adaptive to really pull that brain power into how to solve the continuing problems that our federal government has. There's problems that they've always had. They're just under a different perspective right now. So that's again why I say unprecedented. We haven't looked at our federal system with a lens of this type for a long time. So let's figure out how to do that.
So I'm going to chime in with a little bit somewhat contrarian and say opportunistic, because having spent my career in bids and proposals and growth, every change is also an opportunity, and looking at how to reframe, how to get smarter, how to grow in different environments, commercial or federal. I think putting as much as you can, making that glass half full and looking at it from the perspective of, okay, it's a challenge, we're smart, we're going to overcome this, and we're going to all be better for it. So I say opportunity.
Lots of great answers. I'm going to go with a very dull answer. My answer is different. It's just the bidding landscape is just not what it was before. I think all three you just said, like, it's great chance for opportunities. It's a way how you propose. It's just going to be different. Way you've been doing business for all these years. If you've been a long time contractor, you're going to have to adjust in order to keep up. So, so someone mentioned adaptability. I mean, got to do that in order to succeed here. And it's not the same as it used to be. Simple as that.
And Jeff, can you expand on that a little bit? So
Sure.
It's different and we're seeing a ton of changes. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what's impacting people the most from a change perspective?
Sure. Yeah. To me, the move to more commercial items, being desired. We had one of the executive orders that particularly pointed that out. And, it's all about the speed to execution. We've always had, the valley of death in the DoD world, the Department of War world. And it's all about what we can do to get the right tools and the right services in the hands of those who need it. And it's in the current view of the administration that going more commercial, and we've seen this record played a couple of times over the years, so part of the solution is to go as commercial as possible. Whether it's perfectly commercial off the shelf or it's commercial of a type, it's taking something that you sell to others and making that slight adjustment, whether it's a paint color, whether it's a feature, whether it's a modularity, whatever it may be, in order for the buyer to expedite the purchase. Commercial is one of those big themes that we're going to see a lot going forward.
And if I may, it is part of a paradigm shift, but it's been growing, right? And I spent 6 years in commercial software, also into the federal government and commercial companies. There's been an undercurrent of this, but it is now much more prominent, and a paradigm shift from the way a lot of traditional government contractors have operated. But when you're looking at the whole picture, again, I see so much opportunity for companies to become better in the services that they are providing for the American taxpayer, as well as bringing in those tools and technologies to increase efficiencies and improve services all across the board. So.
Excellent. So we're talking about change, and there's a lot of discussion happening, of course, around the FAR overhaul. And Jeff, you mentioned some of the executive orders and things that are, directly procurement focused. So now that we're nearing the end of the year, what real world impacts are we seeing from those, and how do we expect some of the, some of those changes to continue to evolve into 2026?
I'll start with that one, and then Kristen, I'm really interested to hearing your perspective as well, because I think that what I'm seeing in the FAR overhaul is two things. One, they're taking out a lot of policy and non-regulatory language out of the FAR. That doesn't mean they're removing the policies per se. They're just putting them somewhere else. So be very cognizant of when FAR 2.0 comes out, it's going to have a companion guide that will contain definition of how to interpret the FAR, and also a lot of those non-clause segments of the FAR that are not, necessarily regulatory requirements, but just preferential from the government. So you're going to have two documents to monitor your own compliance against. So that's one thing that I'm seeing. And I think the other thing that we're seeing in terms of the FAR, which of course has not been released yet and is not being worked right now, RFPs are going to come out with automatically expired FAR clauses. So your contracting teams are going to have to pay a lot of attention to what gets submitted on the day it gets submitted and monitor those FAR changes live until those documents get published and finalized.
Yeah, and I think I'll also add, obviously we've seen a lot of chatter and a lot of just discussion around certifications like the 8A program and others, and will they be impacted, will they not, and I think we all know this, but I think now's a really good time to kind of center ourselves around it again. It's not about your certifications anyways. It needs to be about your capabilities and the impact that you make and how you solve problems for your customers. And so I think over time, when a company gets an 8A certification or whatever, they really just lean into that first and foremost, and they kind of rely on that as their, I see it all the time in CAPE statements, websites, proposals, where the first line about the company is, we're an 8A certified company, or we're a woman-owned, whatever. And the government doesn't care, right? The buyer on the other end doesn't care. Yes, they care because it helps check the box sometimes, whatever. But what they care about is how you're going to help solve their problems and, make their lives easier. So I think now with all of that kind of chatter and change happening too, I think it's a really good time to just remember that it's about what you do and how you help, and less about the certifications that you bring to the table. So I think that's something too that is a big shift, and just for everyone to kind of center themselves around again.
I think that's a really interesting point, and kind of building on that, how can organizations focus on what they do well, particularly in a time where so many things are changing, really focus in on what they do well, and how can they make sure that they're seeking out the work that's best suited for that experience?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the impact that they make, and really thinking about it from the standpoint of, we're solving problems for our customers. We're not just executing scope. We're not just executing a contract or whatever the project at hand may be, or the task at hand. It's we're making things faster, more efficient. We're solving complex issues and making them simpler for our government folks, and helping support their bigger mission. It's about the mission and the impact that you bring to that versus the technical scope elements necessarily of what you do. So I think that's just one thing to really get clear on what problems you're solving for your customers, and get their input and feedback on how that's going and what the impact is when you execute a project for them, so that you really tie it back to how it helps them in their day-to-day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. So as we're talking about change and talking about the state of the state of procurement right now, we've heard a lot about consolidation. So the expectation of consolidation of specific opportunities, opportunity types, the GSA carrying more of a load. As we've had a little bit of space from those executive orders, are we seeing that in practice yet? Is that something that is expected more in the new year?
We're definitely seeing in practice. It really started in probably, mid to late August with some of the end of year solicitations that either came out or got canceled. And I think it's really the fact that several of them got canceled is the indication of the future types of bundling that's taking place. Certain activities that are, same activities, different locations, right? GSA has the power, the wherewithal, not just the authority, to consolidate those contracts, to bring the cost of contracting down by allowing a single contractor to supply their same and similar services across the spectrum, not necessarily inside each particular agency or program office. So it's pulling all of the maybe some low-level run-of-the-mill types of just keep the system going projects, and it's going to consolidate them. So if you're supporting, Army Corps of Engineers, you can also support the Navy Logistics Command. You can also support Marine Corps logistics, because they're the same types of activities. So that's what you can look for, is where are, as a contractor, what are your common denominator capabilities? We can't take the full, spray paint approach to everything. We've got to get in delicate with a fine brush. There's my analogy for the weapons that I used to use. You're not painting a mural anymore. You're hand painting a watercolor that's, going to be very specifically required for the government to meet an obligation. So I love what Kristen said. Your credentials aren't going to prove to the government that you can meet an obligation. Your history of success will.
Yeah, I think too, when we start talking about consolidation, it's an interesting kind of paradigm, because like on one end, all roads lead to GSA, it seems, right? There's Oasis Plus, there's the GSA schedule, like those big contracts that, if we're honest, like the bar to get on, it's hard to get on those. Like there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of checks to, or boxes to check. And it's a big lift for a company, especially a small business, to do that, to get on those vehicles. So that's on one side. And then on the other side, we look at like what just happened, I guess a month ago or so, with the Missile Defense Agency SHIELD IDIQ, which was $151 billion IDIQ, all about Golden Dome. But when it came out, originally it was supposed to be mostly for Golden Dome stuff, which I still think it is. But it was also for all DoD agencies. And the bar to get on that one was so incredibly low. Like our team, my team helped like 30 clients, and we kept asking ourselves, like, is it really this easy? Like that's all they want, to get on this IDIQ? And so I think the government's still figuring things out. And it's like some things are really hard and some things are really easy, and it doesn't always make sense right now, which is why I picked the word roller coaster to describe this year, because it's like, is it easy? Is it hard? Are we in? Are we out? I don't know. And it's just up and down. And I think that's an interesting thing as we start looking at contract consolidation and the different types of contracts that are going to now exist out there, and what the bars are to get on those.
Absolutely. And you brought up a really great point with SHIELD. So I know that there is a huge emphasis for so many companies, and they make large investments to get a spot on these large contract vehicles. But that's just, a piece of the puzzle. So once they've achieved that, what do they need to do to actually secure work within these programs?
Yeah, otherwise it's just an expensive piece of paper. It's a contract, but it doesn't bring any revenue in, right? So I always say you got to have a game plan. you know, all roads lead to GSA. So everyone is like, okay, we got to get on the schedule. We got to get on Oasis Plus. But it's like, do you have a strategy to actually win work? Are the customers that you're pursuing going to use those vehicles? Do they know about those vehicles? Do you need to do some education for your customers about the vehicles and how they buy through them? Because that's, you know, a lift and an effort that you need to undertake. But you need a game plan and a strategy, just like anything. You can't just, you know, expect like all the hundreds, probably thousands of companies that submitted on Shield, because again, the bar was really low. But do they have a game plan to market that vehicle and to win work after that's awarded in a month or so? Who knows? You know, I think that's a big miss if you don't have that game plan and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So using Shield as an example, what do they need to be doing now in order to prepare for what's to come?
Talk to your customers. I mean, if you can, if the customers are still around, I think that's a challenge right now, but the more you can talk, the better. You know, put your systems in place. I mean, just like when, you know, when Navy Seaport got awarded, when they did the last on-ramp, I think it was last year, like I got added to the portal for one of our clients. And I mean, there's hundreds of task orders that come out a day on that vehicle. And so if you don't have the system and process in place to like evaluate hundreds of task orders every day and have a screening go, no go, you know, figured out for your company, and like, what is a good opportunity? What's not? What are we going to pursue? What are we not? What's our game plan and systems and process and who's on first? And I think that's just all the details that need to be worked out now while we wait for awards, versus the second you get an award, then it's like, oh crap, here comes the onslaught of task orders, and you're going to either be caught flat-footed and miss out, or you can be ahead of the game and have those systems in place. You've talked to your customers, you know what's on their radar. So that's obviously, in a perfect world, what I would say to start doing now.
Yeah, Krista, can I echo that a little bit more? Like, relationship building is important as ever. Even if, you know, GSA is the consolidated buyer, at the end of the day, it's your end customer who's going to have to live with whatever's purchased. And so you need to have that relationship, getting in front of them and them understanding your value proposition and why they should have a lot of confidence in what you do for a living, you know, and not, you know, impeding with whatever procurement that's in process. But if you've already planted that seed in their mind, be like, hey, listen, did you hear what I did over in Air Force and in their logistics group? You know, you got to remember, there are people behind every procurement decision, no matter how much AI or other machine learning, whatever technological tool that they implement in the evaluation process, it is still a person, a source selection authority who's going to make a decision in any of these competitive situations. So if you don't have your name in their mind, no matter what, it's hard to get rid of that bias. When you know, like, oh, I love working with Kristen. She's so fun to work with. Always has all these great solutions. Like, you're going to keep that in mind, even when you're evaluating the scores, evaluating the price. They're going to find a way to get to who they want to fit with. Just, that's the plain reality.
Thanks, Jeff, for saying that it's fun to work with me. I'll pay you your $5 later.
Well, Jeff said the magic word, AI, what is just today's buzzword. But looking back at what Kristen said, you talked about process. So process and being able to have systems in place or processes in place to manage an influx of bids or manage the assessment of opportunities to be able to make decisions quickly. So that kind of leads us to the AI bit of the conversation. And before we jump in, I do have another poll for our audience. So just want to know, get a temperature check in the room. Are you currently leveraging Gen AI in your proposal and contracting process? So have you jumped into those waters? Are you still mostly manual process? Would just love to hear from the group what your process looks like today. So, and you can answer right on the screen again. I'll just give a couple seconds for everybody to jump in. We're still going up, so I'll give it a couple more. All right, so we'll jump and see what this looks like. All right, so currently leveraging Gen AI? No. So we do have about a quarter of our folks that have not adopted any new technologies. And the huge majority, and this is what we hear most often on our end, is that some, but most of the process and most of the analysis is still pretty manual. I love to see that we do have 15% of folks who are in there and loving it. And this as well, I added that piece, we do, but you're not happy with the result. I think that sometimes a lot of that comes down to what kind of tasks are we using it for and what does that look like. So thank you everybody for your input. Want to transition then into this question. So we talk about AI and automation a lot, of course. But where is it really making a difference in proposals and where is it kind of, overhyped? What are the things that teams need to understand and where can it have the most impact right away?
I'll tell you, the one thing that I love the potential for artificial intelligence, and I will always lead it as potential, and then it is up to us to decide if it did a good job or not. So we'll always put that in my caveat. Qualifications against RFPs and those task orders that Kristen was talking about, right? Get your qualifications into an AI system, right? And qualifications are not necessarily your prior PWSs. They're your prior work, your program management reports, your monthly reports to your customer. Those are the things that you have actually done, right? The PWS is the job description. Those things are your resume. Get that into an AI system so that when an RFP comes out or a task order comes out, the first thing anyone does is look at the title and says, oh yeah, we can do that. Okay, no, right? That's like saying I do IT for the DOD or DOW. Okay, sure, of course you do. But really get to the nitty gritty. Can you actually do this? And I say that because competition is so steep. So if you're not using AI to evaluate your competition, which I don't think we've really figured out as a art how to do that yet, evaluate yourselves with it. Get it to give you a face value assessment of whether or not, and always ask it, if you think I can, tell me why I also can't, to get your qualifications defined, and then to use it to analyze those RFPs against your actual qualifications and not your theories of what your BD team thinks you can accomplish, because they are the optimists. As I lean over to Teresa, they're going to look for those opportunities. However, it's up to the rest of the organization to give the plausibility assessment of whether or not, A, your company is qualified to bid on that work, and more importantly, do you have the capacity and the resources to write the winning proposal? If you're not qualified, please get out of the way. You're wasting the government's time, you're wasting taxpayer dollars, and you're burning out your staff.
So I'll chime in and say that it's overhyped as a panacea, and you should start with looking at your processes and content, because a bad process with a tool is just a faster, more automated bad process. Same thing with content, garbage in, garbage out. So to gain the competitive advantage, companies are leaning in and recognizing by adopting efficiency tools and investing in better internal processes after, as Marcia said, evaluating your RFPs and RFIs, is that you can then get to your good content faster and continue to spend time on things that matter more. And that's back to, what do you know about the client? Like what Jeff and Kristen were saying. Like all of those parts need to be woven together in that cohesive story when you submit the proposal, so the client sees themselves in it. But the upfront preparation to get the benefit is, to me, one of the most important parts of bringing in a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I was at a Visible Thread actual event a couple weeks ago, the customer local customer and event in Alexandria or Arlington. And there was a speaker, and he was talking about how, most LLMs, the stat is that they hallucinate 35-ish% of the time. And so I think that's something to really remember and think about. Like, even if you put in, like if you upload an RFP document, I'm just using ChatGPT, for example, and you tell it, like I did this exact thing. I told it, give me the page requirements broken down by section or volume or whatever. And it completely made shit up. Like I was like, no, that volume doesn't exist, or that section is not actually in the RFP. Show me what page you're looking at. And I argued with it for 20 minutes because I knew it was wrong. And I think there's become this like over reliance, and it's like the easy button. Let's just load all of our stuff in an LLM and pump out a great proposal. And I think there's that hallucination aspect to keep in mind. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I love AI. I use it every day, but I think you have to go in eyes wide open that it may hallucinate, may give you false information. It may put you in a difficult legal situation because proposals are contractual documents. So something to think about there. And, until we get to the point, and maybe someday in the future we will, where an AI writes a proposal and an AI reviews the proposal, like we're not there yet. There's still humans, like Jeff said, on the other side. And those humans are not just reading and evaluating your proposal, but they're making a buying decision. And oftentimes they're making a buying decision with millions of dollars on the line. And so they are human. They have pressures in their job. They've got a boss breathing down their neck. Maybe they had a fight with their spouse this morning. They're dealing with all sorts of life things, right? And so the more you can tell a story in your proposals and speak to those human emotional kind of connections and show them how you can solve their problems and again make their lives easier, I just think that requires human interaction in the writing of a proposal. I have not seen yet where an AI, even the best of them, can add that sort of nuance and context. They can get it closer, but you still need that human involvement. And so I think just treating AI as an easy button is not necessarily the right thing to do. I think it gets us closer and faster to a draft, but then us humans have to take it across the finish line so that it connects to the human on the other side of it. So just something to think about. I think that 35% stat was really eye-opening for me, that how many times it hallucinates. So just something to think about.
Absolutely. And I think that, folks that dive into the prompt engineering piece of it, prompt engineering can only get us so far, but there are things that you can do to create checks and balances. And I think that understanding the building blocks of prompting, understanding how to run verification prompts and run checks on the work that you're creating and make things verifiable and ground them in your data is a step that maybe some people haven't taken, haven't quite gotten to in their learning, but I think is incredibly important to try to create outputs that are at least most of the way there from a usability perspective.
Yeah, one other thing real quick. I just was in New York a couple weeks ago to do a proposal workshop for one of our clients, and we were talking about the need for like a proof library, a library of proof points, metrics, case studies, past performance, like just proof points. And, one of their proposal managers had the idea, I'm going to put all my previous proposals into Copilot, ask it to kind of extract out proof points. And in theory, that sounds great because, to manually go through all those proposals and pull it all out is a lot of work. But then you think about that hallucination number and it's like, oh no, like, is it going to make up things that are not really in your proposals? It's going to tell you that you built millions of square feet of this type of facility when it's really 400 square feet. I don't know, that's probably a bad example, but just again, human verification and
and proposals are proposing what you're going to do, not what you've done. Moreover, if you bring in the teaming aspect of what you in that proposal, I mean, you've just just destroy your data hygiene and cleanliness.
Yeah. Absolutely. And my sort of hot tip for testing prompts, if you're creating complex prompts to do complex jobs, that test them on documents that you will know if it is wrong or not, and make sure, of course, that it's referencing and it's verifiable, but test them on documents where you can find the faults, and then begin to work out and build from there. So you're never going to overcome hallucinations, but certainly it is a trust but verify process. Excellent. Well, so we talk about AI and automation a lot, but I want to ask, what human skill sets are becoming even more critical for winning in 2025 and beyond? So we have discussed AI with human in the loop. What does that look like, and what skill set should people be leaning into as we continue into this technological journey where we're not quite sure where we'll all end up?
I think that what's going to differentiate is the word I'm going to choose, and I'm choosing it wisely, ourselves, is to know exactly what we do that's different from what our competitors do. Human relationships are not going away. They are more important than ever. We've got to be paying attention to what each other is doing. AI is a commonality amongst all of us, right? So what are we putting into AI that is different, that's going to give us an output that makes that proposal stand apart? You're going to give it a fact from your prior performance. So if your business development, capture, and solutions team aren't talking to your operators, then you're not going to know, as Teresa said, where those facts can be put into your proposal. And you're not going to know when you go to extrapolate them out that they're clean facts to begin with. So survey your operations team, get some of those metrics and KPIs that they're performing against, and use those as your qualification and validation. The government is less interested in how we're going to get to the solution, and they're going to be more interested in bring me a solution already works. Right? So how do you prove that? By your metrics and KPIs coming out of your contracts. I think that that's an area where the humans need to speak to each other. And I think another area that we need to focus on is how to say the same story differently, right? How is our company going to use the same terminology to define what it is to a government reader who may or may not be on the same technical scale as the narrator, so to speak? So use good old writing tactics that AI can't replicate. Throw a nice analogy in there, throw an allegory in there, throw a like as in there. Redefine it in plain language when you can't get it written in the technicalities that your engineering team is giving you. So it is all about putting the human element into it. Every proposal has a voice. And if it starts to sound like coming from the government that every contractor submitting proposals is using the same voice, they're going to go with the one that's different, even if it's not better.
Some of that can be it needs to be achieved from the team you have working your proposals. Are they flexible? Are they intellectually curious? Are they adaptable to a new process, and where the person in the loop and the juncture of bringing about those changes in a process and leading forward, as I said earlier, into the new world order of efficiency. The government demands it and what we're providing, and internally teams need to be able to do that as well. So to me, I see you're able to execute what Marsha's talking about when your team is prepared to and has the right mindset and focus of how to achieve those things.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always said that a really great proposal professional, and I think this is still true, just asks really tough questions and really plays devil's advocate, pushes teams to think differently, pushes us to keep the customer in mind. Our proposal's not about us, it's about the customer. And so I think that's even more true in today's time where things are shifting and changing, and we have to get really quiet sometimes as an organization and make sure that what we're doing is the right thing, and that we're again focusing on the mission and the impact, and not just pursuing something because someone said, oh, GSA is the answer, go get on all the GSA schedules and all the GSA contracts. Like, again, getting really centered as a organization. And I think bid and proposal professionals have a seat at that table to do that and to help drive that for your organization and be in those true leadership roles where you can ask the tough questions and just keep everyone focused on the end result, which is to win work and win the right work for your organization. So I think now more than ever, proposal professionals have that opportunity to really step up and drive our organizations to a new place as times shift and change and things evolve.
One other thing I want to quickly add, communications. And we're going to see an increase in oral presentations.
Yeah.
They want you to prove that what you wrote wasn't some machine generated, you based it on a Harvard case study, blah, 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 blah. No, you show me, come in person and tell me, how are you going to do this? How are you going to drive the outcomes that will make buying your solution a net increase in my mission at the end of the day, that I spent money and have an ROI, talk in those kinds of languages, outcome driven. And we haven't said this 4-letter word throughout this whole presentation. Those still exist. They're still going to drive, they're not going to take the nonsense of just putting butts in seats. So at that oral presentation, it's not just about filling the FTE need that might have been described in the statement of work. What are those 50 FTEs going to deliver at the end of 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, whatever the time period may be, that will say, hey, look at what the additional value we generated as a result of acquiring the services from your company.
No, and that's an excellent point. I think we're hearing more often that the combat, I guess, from an evaluation perspective to AI will be more orals and technical presentations and technical challenges. So what do you think that folks need to be doing if we're expecting more of that in 2026? What do you need to do now to prepare? Is it just really understanding your solution and understanding how you're going to solve problems, or are there other things that that are going to be helpful?
I think from my perspective, invest time to get your SMEs trained in presenting. You can do it while you're rehearsing for an actual live presentation, but you're compressed to a week or two of very hard prep time. And, so invest now before there's an opportunity on the table, before you have an orals scheduled, to get your SMEs and your program folks, whoever's going to be representing you at those orals, have them go through training, whether it's specific to orals training or something like Toastmasters or something, just general speaking and presenting skills. Because I've spent my whole 20+ year career working with engineers. They are brilliant. They are not you tell them to go stand in front of a room and present something, they crawl inside themselves, and it is the last thing that they want to be doing on earth. And so getting them comfortable and giving them the toolkit and the skill set to know how to present in those situations, so that when they're under rapid fire in front of a client, next month or whatever, trying to answer live Q&A, that's very daunting and stressful. And so the more you can back up now and take some time to invest, whether it's hiring an orals coach to do training, or again, something like Toastmasters, just giving them the comfort level so that when they're live, it's better and easier for them.
And I would expand on the SMEs and say, look at your whole organization, and does it have a culture of growth? And do individuals in each of their roles that are client facing understand how they contribute to the whole? And a lot of folks will be like, well, I don't want to be in sales, or that it's about providing the best customer service. But in that is your execution, which is your, goes to your past performance and your libraries and all of those aspects. So, or listening, do I hear, hot buttons or challenges? Can I, as a solution architect, can I bring that back and help and create a more effective solution. So when I do think that when you look at the whole, is your organization all considering where they contribute and have that culture that's celebrated.
Yeah, I love that culture aspect of everything, Teresa, because I think we're forgetting that we are 3D human beings. And so being in a room with each other is not common practice anymore. So being in front of a room of an audience is way more uncomfortable than it even has been, because we haven't even been participants in an audience for going on 5 years now, at least, since, pre-COVID started. It's just like we are out of the habit of relating to each other as human beings. But I think the other piece to that, going into 26 and just getting ready from an organizational perspective, you got to find comfort in the chaos right now, right? We are learning everything about change management. So pay attention to what the industry is doing. And by the industry, I mean the contracting industry and us as consultants, right? Jeff, Kristen, Teresa, and I, we are all studying on a regular basis what is happening inside the federal government. There are some great advocates on LinkedIn right now. So if you don't have somebody championing what changes your organization is going to need to bring into place and what training you're going to need to be updated on, now's the time, because not everybody has their heads down responding to an RFP. The government has now exceeded into the longest closure of all time. We do not know when this will end. And like I said earlier, when it ends, it's going to end with probably some of the worst RFPs we've ever seen in our careers, because it got shut down in the midst of change. It's going to open back up in the midst of change, and that thing's going to be due in the midst of change. And this isn't going to settle before the end of FY26. So everybody who is feeling any sort of comfort in their role right now is probably not paying attention. And I don't mean that negatively. This is a time for optimism. If you need a skill, go get it. Ask your leadership what they can afford in investment. I know they're closing those purse strings, but reach out to a company like ours or a company like Kristen's or even Cone Resnick that can say, I can tell you how to put your money where it's going to get you a return. And submitting an RFP that comes out the day after the federal government opened is probably not going to get you any return.
Well, Marcia, that's a good transition, because our last question is asking for a bit of a prediction. So looking ahead, what is your prediction for 2026 and how can we be prepared?
I'll say early adopters. Oh, sorry, Marcia. I didn't know if there was a lag there. I'm going to say early adopters in their process and technology, and investing internally to the preparation to be able to bid smartly, not more because you have a better process and better content, but focusing on the ones that you can win and not taking away from them to throw bluebirds. So those who are leaning in, early adopters, are going to be the one that reap the benefits.
Jeff or Kristen, do you want to add?
If you want a bold prediction that is probably against the tide here, I think we're going to see a lot more sole sourcing, because the understanding of all the new FAR rules, especially with the shutdown going on, it's gonna take too long of a time for contracting office to get up on the new rules to be like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to give these companies another 1-year contract while I figure out how the heck I'm going to repeat this requirement. So I hate to give that kind of thing, but I think we're going to see a lot more of it. So hence the relationship building, and give the confidence, know the rules as well as your customers, and be like, listen, you could be suggestive and how to help guide those customers to get that recompete out. So just my bold prediction.
Making it easy for them, right? It's what we do when we're bidding, or just help them do their jobs and make it easy. And 1-year extensions, that's opportunity for the incumbents.
Yeah, I think it's hard to predict anything in this day and age, I feel like, but I think there's a lot of struggle. This is not easy, especially for smalls. And, you know, we have a lot of small business clients that were very severely impacted, and they have fought tooth and nail to stay alive this year. I mean, hell, earlier this year, I didn't know if I was going to still have a business by the end of this year. Like, let's be honest, right? So I think, not to end on a down note, but like there's just a lot of struggle and a lot of unknowns and uncertainty. But the more you can, especially if you're a small business, I think there's power in the pivot, whatever that pivot looks like. As small businesses, I think we forget that we have the luxury to pivot and be nimble, be flexible, change how we go to market, shift, adapt, whatever. You know, you ask a large business, a huge global enterprise to pivot, and like, I'll see you in 20 years. Like it takes forever for them to turn the ship, right? But if you're at a small, even a mid-size, like you have that power to pivot. So I think just the more companies do that, and again, center and get quiet about what you're doing and why, and who you're serving and why, I think those businesses will continue to survive and others won't. And I hate that for those businesses, but you know, it's just a crazy time, and you have to be hungry, you have to be humble, and you got to be smart about it. And you have to stay connected. Like, that's the other thing I'll add too. Like, we're all in this together, and I wouldn't have made it through this year if it weren't for my friends and colleagues and contacts and connections in the industry, because we're all going through the same thing. I mean, look at our government friends. Like, we all have friends that work at the government now. They're out of work, they're not getting paid. Like, that's a struggle, right? And so the more you can remember that we're all humans and check on each other and just connect and be in this together and help out where you can, I think that would be great. So that's my closing thoughts.
Now, I think that's an excellent reminder that we're all human, we're all in this together. And I think sometimes acknowledging that this is hard and different, and it is going to take a different approach, gives you the courage to actually start thinking outside the box and not get into that sunken cost fallacy that some people that can happen as well. So we do have a couple questions. I want to circle back to a couple things, and then we will wrap up. So the first question is, as a leader of a technology modernization company, I'm often torn on how to demonstrate how I can help customers on their day-to-day without getting into jargon, especially when RFP, RFI itself can be fairly jargony. How do you recommend threading the needle of demonstrating the ability to add value without drowning them in jargon?
I think from my perspective, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marcia.
Well, yeah, real quick, and then probably the same, right? There's nuance in everything, but it's drawing the correlations. I think, you know, we know what synonyms are. We all went to third grade. There's different ways of using language to make your point, and again, that's something that artificial intelligence, generative AI is not going to get you. So if you're talking to an engineer and they're using a lot of jargon, a good proposal writer, a good proposal strategist should be able to translate that, because they're used to hearing things they don't understand. And one of the skill sets of a good person in the proposal industry is that deductive reasoning. So if you can get your proposal writer to understand your concept, they can get the words in the way it needs. If you don't have somebody doing that, speak to a layperson on your team. How do I get you to understand what it is I'm trying to do? You know, again, lean on each other. If it's not making sense to a reviewer, you know, on a red team, it's not really going to make sense to a government contracting officer who's on the paperwork side of things and not on the technical side of things. So use language. And again, that's becoming a lost art, because we're dependent upon a language cloner to get the words that we need. But we really maybe just need somebody with a more naive perspective to look and say, these words I don't understand. Can you try to use different words?
Yeah, it's also the so what factor. Like as you're writing your proposal and reviewing your draft, constantly asking yourself from the reader's perspective. So again, from the customer buyer's perspective, so what? Why does this matter to them? What's the benefit for them? I think a lot of proposals are feature heavy in that they're all about ourselves and how great we are, and it's just because that's easy. It's easier to write about ourselves and from our perspective. But a great proposal speaks from the customer's perspective and really answers that so what factor, and it's benefit rich, and it tells a story about what they get by choosing your solution, your expertise, your experience. So translating that technical jargon into the benefits and the so what factor, I think will help connect again to the reader emotionally, and they'll really see themselves, picture themselves in the solution that you're providing, because they see how it will help them make their lives easier.
And I'll just add in that during your capture and pre-work for that opportunity, all of those things should be presented to the prospect / customer for validation and to inform your proposal when you write it. So to make sure you're on the right path, you have the right solution, and what you include in your proposal lands the way you want it to bring you that win.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful discussion. I really appreciate you all joining us. Thank you to our panelists. And of course, I have this slide up. Everybody would like you to connect with them on LinkedIn. If you have any additional questions, if you want to continue the conversations, we did have a couple leftover questions in the chat. So I'm going to make sure I get those out to the panelists, and we will get you all connected and get some answers for you there. So in the follow-up information that you get, you will be receiving the recording in your email, and there will be the contact information for all of our panelists there as well. So again, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for participating in Optimize. And if you're on for our next session, we will start here at the top of the hour, how to gather competitive intelligence like an intelligence professional. So looking forward to that, and hope that you're enjoying, I'm sure that you enjoyed this session, but I hope that you are attending others and enjoying all of that Optimize has to offer. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, panelists. Excellent job, excellent insights as always. And I'm going to go ahead and end. So everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.